2023 came with massive layoffs, hundreds of thousands of people that lost their jobs, left to wonder what's the next step. We've all heard a million times to get on LinkedIn, create content, make sure that you're a thought leader in your space, and do anything you can to get noticed to get into the next position that you want. But we don't necessarily know where to start. There's so many options, there's so many theories on how to create good content, what to do, how to post, what's the format, what's the frequency. But still, we're left crippled, not exactly knowing what to talk about and what to post and when to post. We're going to cover all that today on episode 1 of The Bridge with Chris Morga. Welcome to episode 1 of The Bridge. I'm your host, Chris Morga, and today we're going to cover all of the secrets, tips, and strategies of LinkedIn posting with someone who's incredible at it. Kasey Jones, the creator of A Better Jones. She has garnered over 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, which as a B2B network is hard to do. But she's mastered the frequency, she's mastered the topics, the engagement, and the format. And talk about generosity, she's going to share it all with you today. So again, thanks for hanging out. Welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Chris Morga. Kasey, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's so good to be here, Chris. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm sorry for kind of stalking you. You want to come on the show? You want to come on the show? You want
to? It's friendly stalking. I appreciate that. I'm game for it, and I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that because, like I said earlier, I've been following you for so many years in your journey through teaching people sales tactics and really leveraging your experience through so many years of sales and marketing, and kind of watching that turnover to where, the outsider looking in, I could see almost that switch in your mind where you were like, well, wait a minute, what am I doing? I know this stuff. Why am I not sharing it on a much more personal and intimate level with people directly rather than through kind of a middleman? So that was really, really exciting for me to watch everything grow for you. And congratulations on so many things. It's been awesome.
Thank you. It's always funny, when you're in the thick of it, we're usually so focused on all the things that are not going right. And so it is really helpful to sometimes have someone be like, they've like zoomed out and seen the whole journey and been like, oh yeah, no, you've made some progress. I'm always like, super annoyed that I haven't reached that 40K number yet. And so it's always a good reminder, right, of not just focusing on where we've got room for improvement, but also how far we've come. So thank you for that.
That's so true about how far we've come. When I'm talking to my day job as a recruiter, I talk to people all the time, and I'll jump on their LinkedIn profile with them, and I say to them, take a look. You've got 132 people connected to you on LinkedIn. And we, think of that maybe such a small number in comparison to some of the large influencers that have tremendous numbers. But I tell them, just think of it this way. You've got 132 people standing in a room waiting to hear what you have to say. And you can almost hear that gulp. Because now there's people waiting to hear what I have to say. So I can imagine at almost 40,000, for you, it becomes much more important to make sure that your messaging is clear, because just knowing you from being the bystander, you seem like the type of person that you really want to help every single one of those people to be the best versions of themselves.
I do. I think a big part of what drives me is that I've made literally every mistake a person could possibly make in personal and professional life. And I've been through a lot, but I've learned from all of it. And I've worked very, very hard to come out the other side of all of those experiences, a better version of myself because of it, stronger, braver, more resilient, more empathetic, more loving, more joyful, all these other things. And I know that I have this opportunity to help other people overcome challenges, get through hard things, come out the other side better for it. And I feel this responsibility to be able to help people I don't know, get through some of those experiences a little bit more easily than maybe I did.
I love how you said that, where, help people to get over challenges because it sounds very personal,
It is.
and, just someone listening to that, it almost feels like you're speaking to them directly and you're saying, well, let me help. I've failed with grace and I did something out of it. So
It
let me
wasn't
help.
always super graceful in the moment, but we we do we do hope there is that grace in the long run. And look, I think that's the beauty and the opportunity of building a person, what everyone calls personal brand, I refer to as personal platform, is that you really do have this opportunity to help other people. um, and yes, you have the opportunity to help yourself. But I think a lot of people that resist showing up online is they really worry that they will say the wrong thing, that people will see the wrong thing, or that people will think that I hear this often. People will be like, well, I don't want everyone to think I'm a narcissist. And it's the people that I know that have had the most success growing online are some of the most generous, kind, giving people. They are really in it for, yeah, they want to grow their business. Yeah, they want to develop their careers. But what really drives them and what encourages them to post something that, let's be real, literally every time you post, it's at least a little terrifying. It gets easier, but it's always a little terrifying. Um, so what helps us get over that is this hope, this burning wish that we're going to say something that is going to make someone else's life just a little easier.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that because that's the major component of it all is the fear that, the fear of rejection. If you
Yeah.
post something that doesn't rub someone the right way, that you're going to be canceled for it,
Yeah.
or someone's going to take it the wrong way. And I don't think that's the idea of it to begin with. I mean, a lot of life is perception based anyway, right? It's
Hmm.
how we view and through what lens that we walk through life. And there's millions of other people that are walking through life almost on the same journey that we
Yeah.
are, and we don't realize it, but we're always looking for the ones that aren't walking on that same journey
Yeah.
and to try to change their no's into yeses, or whatever the case may be. So excuse me. I love how you said that with, posting, because I get the question all the time. Okay, Chris, if I'm going to post and I'm going to be active, where do I start or what do I say? So for,
Mhm.
any of the listeners here, if you have any tips on
Yeah.
where for them to start and what they should say for their personal experience or their skills or skill sets.
So what I really encourage is, and one of the things that I think is actually really cool for this audience that we're talking about, a lot of who I wind up working with are entrepreneurs, and it's B2B. But if you really think about it, if you are on a job hunt or think you might eventually be on a job hunt, it's B2B. We'll just think of you getting a job like you're your own tiny little business, and you want to connect with and appeal to other professionals at businesses. And so what I encourage you to do is kind of take a step back and think, okay, what is my expertise in? So what are the problems that I can help people solve? Right? Let's say you are a director of marketing. Okay. And you have some experience in lead gen, demand gen, I don't know, SEO, content, whatever it is. That's kind of going to be the quote, some of the problem that you solve, or some of the ways that you can help. And what you want to think about is like, okay, you have this sort of broader theme of content, right? So let's say it's all things related to digital marketing. And then you want to, that's your like little theme. And then you want to think of almost like topic clusters. So, okay, you've got digital marketing. What else goes into that? It's lead gen, it's SEO, it's content marketing, it's working with the sales team, it's doing customer research, right? You've got all these little subtopics. And then just start talking about problems that people have in those topics and how to solve them. And it can start with very tactical things, but you can also you can tell stories of when you had this aha moment where you think, um, I thought this would be the best way to solve this problem. And I learned it was actually this, or I tried this thing and I didn't, and I thought it was going to work this way, but it actually worked that way. And so it's just about letting people in your journey a little bit and truly have it be very focused on the work you do, the problems that you solve at work, and how you think about it, how you approach it. Um, and people worry a ton about like haters and bullies and getting canceled. First off, particularly on LinkedIn, way less common than you think it is. Way less common. The most likely response is crickets, and people just ignore it. It's pretty rare that you will say something that gets people so riled up that they actually argue with you. But what's kind of cool is if somebody does argue with you, I bet you said something that other people will then totally freaking agree with, and you can get into like a pretty cool conversation. Really
Wow,
like,
there's so much to unpack there. That was
oh yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
You
and
went from high level down to granular so easy.
but this is the deal. Like, we worry a lot about what people think. The most likely, the most likely outcome is that people just don't even notice. And what that means is that if you are just getting started, you've got some ability to kind of experiment because not that many people are going to see it. There's not that much that is at stake. Um, the likelihood that someone's going to get really riled up and be mean is pretty slim. And I actually can't think of a single person that has been, quote, canceled on LinkedIn. It's just not that
Me
kind of
either.
platform.
Yeah. And people realize that potentially their employers are looking too. So they don't want to say anything out of color or out of turn
Oh,
because
yeah,
ultimately it can come back to bite them in the butt.
exactly. I think years ago, when I first started creating content on LinkedIn, it was a lot more common for women to have men say sort of inappropriate things in the DMs. And let me tell you, what what happens now, and I think it happened pretty quickly, is like the women would then just take a screenshot and send it to their boss, and that doesn't happen anymore. And so
Yeah.
these kinds of things that just people are kind of on their best behavior, and um they might argue a point with you on occasion, but even that's pretty rare. Most likely, if they disagree with you, they just don't comment.
Yeah. And, I think LinkedIn just reached a billion
They
members
did.
now. And I mean, that's compelling.
It is.
And I think everybody has their secret obsession or their alternate platform, right? I've been guilty of poking around Instagram every once in a while just
Yeah.
to see what my kids are doing, or that's what we'll say that I'm doing. Um, but, LinkedIn really has become such an amazing platform to get anything you want out of your professional career,
Yeah.
even starting out to where there's a lot of people battling because you see the content creators and the YouTube superstars, and there's people going, okay, well, I just got laid off. Maybe I can jump into that arena. And even if you are, LinkedIn is the place to start with that
Mhm.
because it's such a professional platform and it's such a learning platform. I garner it second to YouTube, to anything you want to find out. You just hashtag the skill. You can read through comments and get an MBA.
Oh yeah, and what's really cool, I had a conversation with a woman who she is a big enough deal on LinkedIn that she has there's a LinkedIn employee that is like assigned to her, which is kind of cool. And she was saying that actually LinkedIn is intentionally shifting the algorithm. They're looking at the posts that go crazy viral and looking at what makes them go viral, and they're actually changing their algorithm to make that less likely. And the reason why, what they really want to prioritize is not stuff that goes viral because it's super high level and like not really saying anything, which is kind of what happens on Twitter or Instagram, so that they can really focus on elevating the posts that actually teach. actually deliver kind of instructional, informational value. And so now it could not be a more perfect time to get on LinkedIn and start talking about what you do and how you do it. And what's really interesting, yes, a billion users. However, less than 1%, fewer than 1% of LinkedIn users create one post per week. So if you create one post a week, you're immediately in the 1%. That means that, yeah, okay, there's a lot of people, but in terms of breaking through the noise, it's a lot easier than you might think. And it's definitely easier than a lot of these other platforms because they're going to elevate voices that are talking about very specific, valuable, informational things. And most people on the platform are consumers, not creators. And so if you start creating and creating with some intention, you will immediately set yourself apart.
Absolutely. And the consistency is the key too, right?
Totally.
Because like you said, I'm guilty of it myself, but it's just not my model of posting on social media. I get a lot of my clients through word of mouth or some of the
Yeah.
community members that I have. Some of them are on Facebook, just
Yeah,
because we've been in communities and Facebook does communities pretty well.
they do.
But I think that's very, very important too for people that are just starting out is to post that once a week. And, even to go a little bit deeper, the content is always there.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to post about? Your everyday life is giving you hundreds of pieces of content
Yeah.
that, excuse me, you can even repurpose for months,
Oh,
and months.
well, here's a deal. If you go look at some of the big creators that you really look up to and admire, so if you actually kind of scroll back, you'll see that most of them, they'll repost their top performing content about once a quarter. Because
You've noticed that.
yeah, and what's really interesting is people think that what you have to do to create content on social media is come up with 1,000 different things to say. And that's not
Mhm.
really the goal. The goal is really to come up with like maybe 3 or 4 things to say, but 1,000 different ways. Because you don't need to be talking about something wildly different every single day. You want to really think about what are your sort of core um, topics that you want to cover, and you want to just keep coming at it from different angles, and that becomes a lot easier. And I think for your audience, when you're really thinking about it, it's the way you want to think about LinkedIn is the content you create, the your actual sort of feed is almost like you networking at an event, right? You're going to meet people,
I love that.
you're going to be able to tell these little stories and that's cool anecdotes. But then you go to the profile, and your profile is like a kick-ass like resume on steroids. You've got the about is your cover letter. It's the context, right? Your work history is what would be in your resume. It is the work history that you have, the things you've done, the things you've accomplished. And P.S., people way underthink it. They'll just have the job title and nothing more.
Mhm.
Total wasted opportunity. That about section, it's the cover letter, it's the context, it's like how it all ties together. And then you get your headline, you get your image to add this like personality and this color, and then you can have the content that only adds to it, right? And it's you can create this entire sort of ecosystem that helps you find that job, helps you further your career, all in one place. You don't even need to leave your house, which is ridiculously cool.
And it's so simple to do once you get the rhythm of it. In my course I was telling you about, I
Yeah.
teach people that because a lot of times I get, Chris, should I post my resume on LinkedIn? Absolutely not. Don't ever mirror your resume on
Yeah.
LinkedIn because again, it's a sales funnel. It's kind of a nerdy adaptation, but you think of the internet as the information superhighway. Well,
Yeah.
LinkedIn is your free digital billboard on that highway. And
100%.
what you're supposed to be doing is offering just enough compelling information on your LinkedIn profile that leads them to go, oh my
Huh.
God, this is great. I want
I
to see
should talk to
Kasey's
this
resume.
person. Exactly.
Yeah. And then with that, they want to have all that statistical information that's on there, on that resume, that leads to ultimately the interview. And then the interview, all you're doing is you're doing the same thing that Macy's and JCPenney does around the holidays. You're leading people down a customer journey to click the
Yeah.
buy now button. For you, the buy now button is an offer letter. Same
I love
concept.
it.
You know?
And here's the thing, like, I love the way you talk about this because I think about this from an entrepreneurial perspective about the buyer's journey. Okay, so it's the same thing when you're thinking about people to hire you. So one of the things I love about LinkedIn is you want to, in any buyer's journey, you want to intentionally, you want to create a feeling. Okay, it's
Mhm.
here's the deal. I hate to break it to all of you. No matter what you do, no matter like the problems you solve, your experience, there's literally hundreds, probably thousands of people that can do the exact same thing that you can. However, the experience you create for the people around you, for the people that you're working with while you do it, that is uniquely you. And so you want to think about, okay, when I am at my most sort of empowered, badass self, when I make the biggest impact in my work, how do I show up and how do I make the people around me feel? And how can I weave that in to my LinkedIn content, to my LinkedIn profile? Like you'll see, um, I curse like a sailor. I'm going to put that in my LinkedIn profile
I
because
like that.
that's just how I am. And like, granted, I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't have to, you know, there's that. But it's also I am bold, I am outspoken, I'm very direct. So you come to my profile and you will see big bold colors. You will see like big language, over the top stuff because that is me. As a coach, one of the things that makes me very different is I am really good at the tactics and the strategy. I can help my clients grow. Like I can really help with the nuts and bolts things. However, because of what I talked about earlier, I've gone through some really challenging things in life and it's a core part of who I am and how I show up. I'm deeply, deeply empathetic and I bring the emotion into the work that I do with my clients. So I also make sure that my content reflects that. If the only thing I talk about in my content is the nuts and bolts of like tactics and strategy, it's only showing a very narrow slice of who I am and the kind of impact I create in the work that I do. And so sometimes and I want to be clear, like you don't have to think through all of this stuff if you want to get started on LinkedIn. But one of the things I really appreciate about creating content and building a personal platform is it does actually help you better understand who you are as a person and what matters to you and what makes you different. Because if you're having to like intentionally put that out into the world on a regular basis, you start to, you create a piece of content and you think, no, that felt weird. That didn't feel like me. Or you create something else where you think, I don't know that this is the smartest thing to do, but I just really want to do it. And it works. And that it takes you down this journey where over time you understand yourself and you understand the kind of impact you can have in the world in a much deeper way. It's a weird kind of personal growth accelerator. It truly is. And no one talks about it, but I think it's kind of the best advantage that comes from all of this.
I really need like a standing ovation button for all that.
It's funny. I did a Twitter space recently and I got on like multiple tangents and someone at the end was like, "Seriously, I feel like we need to somehow film this and like it's like you giving like some, speech on a soapbox or whatever." I get on a tear. It's just how I am.
You and me both. I mean, there's times that my wife will be like, oh, here he goes. All the way, all the time at family events, I'll just start talking to something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And both, my wife and my kids, there goes dad.
Yeah, you know what? You want to bring that passion. That's just how
Yeah,
we are.
that's how we show up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really love, you gave so much. Oh my goodness, you gave so much. There's people kind of wonder about um, the framework, right? So I did notice that you changed up some of the way your framework is on your content, and I noticed a couple other people that had done the same thing. I don't know the granular component or why you had changed it up, but I noticed that it's really gaining a lot of traction. So can you tell people how to kind of craft a certain framework of what they can do for their posting?
So there's a couple things. One, it all comes down to the hook. So people, when they
Okay,
are on social media, they are aggressively scrolling. They're looking for something that is going to grab their attention that they want to read. If they're on their phone, on LinkedIn, they will only see the first, I think it's like one or two lines of
yeah,
your post, and they have to click something that says see more. If it's on desktop, I think they see three lines. So the deal is you've got to say something in those first couple of lines that make someone say, yes, I want to read this. Most of us learned how to write in high school or college, where we were taught to have these sort of long preambles of like leading someone into a thing. Don't do that on social, because it just won't work. So you want it to start with, so if you're telling a story, you almost kind of start with the end, and then you start to kind of fill it in. So think about, and if you go onto social, I really encourage looking and notice what makes you stop your scrolling,
that's good.
and pay attention. You're like, oh, it's when they do this, it's when they do that. The other thing that was really transformative for me is, so a lot of the guidance on social media is about telling people to do how to posts and to solve sort of tactical problems. And there's a couple of things here. One, people actually now are much more interested in not how to, but how I. So, how do I solve this problem? How do I approach this? And you've got to include some information about why I should trust you, right? How I do this. Oh, P.S. I have this many years of experience. I've done these things, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that was really transformative for me is, like I've already said, yes, I'm good at the tactics and strategy. I do that work with clients, but what it really differentiates me is my experience and how I kind of bring that into the work that I do. So tactical, writing posts about solving tactical problems, it never really worked for me. And for a long time, I was trying to do that because that was all the guidance out there, that that's what you should do. And what I've realized is that the posts that do very well for me are when I tell stories about my life. And what's very interesting is, and this is especially for the folks that are listening that are really thinking about, they want to reach more senior people. So if you are, let's say you are manager level or above, and that means the hiring manager that you're targeting is going to be director level or above, they are they don't spend their time, and they don't go onto social media to think about solving tactical problems. These are people that are at the strategic level. They are thinking about much more big picture things. So they're not really going to be that interested in you helping them solve a really nuts and bolts tactical thing about like how to improve the SEO on a post. What is going to capture their attention is stuff that is it's more strategic, it's more big picture, and um, it's more about telling these sort of authority sort of stories that will make that person go, oh, whoa, I hadn't thought of it like that, or like that's cool, or that makes me think in a different way. And so for me, telling stories from my experience, and PS, a lot of them it's the story of how I figured out that tactical or strategic thing. It does a few things. One, because I'm telling the story, it's the how I versus how to. Two, it makes it much easier for me to weave in my personality and my style, and like it feels just more me and it's more authentic. But three, and much more importantly, it helps me show my credibility because I can talk about the context of how I learned that thing or what happened. And it gives someone an insight into the context around like how I had this experience, and it's just more impactful and it's more motivating, and for me it's way more fun to write.
And that's the key, is the context too.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of times people will post and they try to get to the answer as quickly as possible without giving any color around
yeah,
it or any context around it, and it gets lost in translation
yeah,
quite a bit. And then you're not necessarily really targeting anyone,
yeah.
So
and
that's
i
good. That's good information.
and I think that's a good point, and I think this is the other thing is we think that because it's professional and it's business that it has to be purely professional and like logical and rational. But here's the deal, we're driven by emotion. And so if you can, even if you are talking about a very kind of tactical or strategic thing, if you can bring the emotion into it of like, okay, how much of a pain in the ass it was before you learned how to solve that tactical problem, like, how frustrating it is or how annoying it is or like whatever, bring the emotion in, and that grabs a hold of people and it gets them really excited, and it also humanizes you.
Hmm. And that's the key too.
Yeah.
Is another key. We kind of talk about it that like voyeurism sells, and I don't mean that in like the weird way, but
We're not being
people
dirty.
love, huh?
Said we're not being dirty.
No, no, not at all. But like people always love to watch how other people's lives are shaping up.
Yes.
And like what did they do to fix this problem? Or, why does their life look so perfect? I can do that.
Yeah.
So that always brings the interest in people. Even a lot of my clients or the people I talk to that are candidates, they're looking at other professionals on these social media platforms and going, that's the life I want to live. You can get it. You
Here's
really can.
but here's the other thing. Let's be real. When we're looking at someone's social media, you're looking at their highlight reel.
The best. Yeah.
No one sees what is actually going on, and just keep that in mind. It's like
Mhm.
people sometimes look at, you know, my content, and they have a certain impression of what my life is like, what I am like, and it's a big part of why I talk about the hard things I've been through, the failures that I've had along the way, because most people's content doesn't. And frankly, I think we all need a little more reality of the fact that, like, dude, life is hard.
Mhm.
And just because something might look good online or on social, or I might be in a good place today, it doesn't mean I didn't go through a decade of struggle and ups and downs and all the rest. It's like, let's be real. 2 hours ago, I was talking to my therapist and crying. Like, dude, that's life. Like, it is complex and there's all of these other things. And so I really encourage people to know that just because it looks like someone's figured it out online doesn't mean that they actually have. It doesn't mean that their life is really any better or any different. They're just sharing it in a particular way, and that's totally feasible. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you because you haven't gotten to that point. Like, it's just like you can do it too. It's there's no secret. It's just doing it and being consistent and sticking with it even when it sucks.
And social media is not old Hollywood. I think people get stuck in that where
Yeah.
they try to make it look, well, it's got to look like, a production or a movie. No, it doesn't.
No.
Because as you just proven, the hardships and the relatability to the problems in life is what resonates
Yeah.
because people want to know that I'm not alone in this.
Yes.
So that I think that's amazing, for people to start to understand. Do you use, this is kind of a loaded question. Um, Do you use a content calendar?
I don't use a content calendar, but that's also because I've been doing this for a long time and it's a little bit easier. So, what I would say, I wouldn't use a content calendar if you're kind of starting out. I think
Mhm.
it's totally fair, though, to schedule stuff. I think that's fine.
Mhm.
So I really like the tool Taplio. That's what I use for LinkedIn. It'll give you great metrics on what you are doing. And you can, the thing that I like too is you can draft the post and it'll show you what it'll look like on mobile. It'll show you what it'll look like on desktop. So you can see where, what line is going to, be at that cutoff on both. It'll help you format it and then you can schedule it so you can be consistent. One thing I will say, because I've been talking about this a lot lately, is what I really do encourage is for a while, make 80% of your posts very specific about the work that you do, about your work, about
Agreed.
the lessons you've learned, blah, blah, blah. Maybe 10 to 20% can be a little bit more personal. But have it be when you're in that early phase of kind of building your authority and trying to become known for something, focus it on that. Make it about adding real value and helping other people, and it'll come.
There's that 80-20 rule again. That's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And honestly, when you really do look at like if you do that for yourself, you look at your life and your business and you're like, okay, if 80% of my positive results are coming from 20% of my actions, and PS, it's totally true, what's the shit that I can cut? And it
Yeah.
is pretty empowering when you're like, oh wait, I spent a bunch of time doing this and it really doesn't do anything. I'm gonna stop.
Mhm. And here's the other rub is that as you're doing this, you're building up influence, you're building up impact, notoriety, your name is getting out there. And at some point, the beauty of it is you can create a life of choice. Because, right, I think it was last year, people were creating digital courses for everything.
Yep.
So while you're getting your name out there and you're doing exactly what you said, sharing 80% of the work that you do and 20% of the internal,
Yeah.
you're building a following of people that are coming up behind you in your field of study that would love to learn from you even more. So now you're out of work, you're trying to find a job, but you're also monetizing your skills.
Exactly.
So you're creating insurance for your career.
It is total insurance. And I think it's interesting, even so, and I said that I was going to share this story. So, good friend of mine, I shouldn't say good friend. We haven't talked in years, but he was a good friend. And I still think of him as a good friend. I remember he told me this story. He was an account executive. And I think it was in, I don't know, maybe 2017. He had been at a place for like a year and a half, 2 years. He got laid off. And it took him 4 months of just constant applying for jobs, sending out resumes, having interviews, all the rest before he got something. So he gets a new job. And while he was at that job, he decided that he was going to start building his personal brand. And he started a podcast. And he won't mind that I'm telling this story. His name is James Bawden. And I don't think he still has this podcast, but he had a podcast called the Lunchtime Podcast. He named it that because he wanted his employer to know that he was not taking any work time to do it. And he literally would,
That's
I was
great.
one of his first interviews, and he would interview people in 20 minutes during his lunch break. And he started posting on that. He started talking about sales on LinkedIn. And he did not have a big following by any stretch of the imagination, but he started to kind of, grow and build some relationships. And about 9 months in, he got laid off again. And he posted on LinkedIn and was like, well, I just got laid off. He had a job offer 4 days later.
I
And
love that.
and he'll talk about it, about how like that's the difference. That's the
Mhm.
difference is, and what wound up happening is a VP of sales from a company reached out to him when he posted saying, hey, I just got laid off, and was like, oh my God, I've been following you for the last 6 months. I love the way you talk about sales. I was going to reach out because I thought that maybe we could do work together, but like, I want to scoop you up. Can we have a call? He didn't send a resume. He didn't reach out to a recruiter, nothing. All he did was post about it, and he had an offer in under a week. And he wound up being that I think they hired him as an account executive. I think he ultimately wound up moving up to VP of sales at that company. And it was this huge thing. And like, that's the power. That's the power of a personal brand, is your network shows up for you in all these incredible ways that you can't possibly foresee.
This is the community of yesteryear.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we're moving, and we have to adapt to it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's very important because the younger generations that are coming up, this is all they know.
Yep.
So when they're doing this, they're shaping their community, which can now be larger than we had it back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And they're
Oh,
doing just that.
it's
Everybody knows
relationship.
who they are. They know their work ethic. They know exactly what they bring to the table, and it's much easier than applying to the ATS systems or trying to create some type of CRM. So, even at 47 years old, I'm all in on content management and content creation and just putting things out there for the next generations too. And a lot of times, I just want to touch on this really
Yeah.
quick, would be cognizant of time. But a lot of people get scared. We were talking about earlier about putting content out and being afraid of, what
Mhm.
the outcome is going to be. And for me, earlier on, when I would do some of the videos, and again, the class of 2018, when I would put out the videos, I would be talking to my kids in my head
Yeah.
because it made it easier. I wasn't afraid because I figured, okay, at some point, this is valuable information that my kids could use later on.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that helps me to get over that fear of it. You have any tips like that for people?
So I like love that one, and I really do think that's a great tip. Um, Imagine a very specific person that you're writing to. And so if you are really thinking about, you're talking very specifically about your work, what I recommend is to start out with, talk to you 2 years ago.
Ooh,
Write every single post to you 2 years ago. What are the aha moments that like 2 years younger you would have like killed to learn?
yeah.
Like, it's just about, it doesn't have to be this really difficult thing. It's younger you. Just talk to younger you about, the lessons that they can learn, the aha moments they can have, the confidence that you want to help them build. And what will be really cool is you will get a bunch of people who are peers or people who are a little bit behind you who will be super, super grateful for that. But also, you'll have people who are ahead of you who are like, oh God, that's really smart. That's amazing. I can totally relate to that. And I loved what you were saying earlier of like, no, 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 it's an insurance thing. You can build courses, all the rest. I don't care where you are in your journey. You are an expert to someone. You are 2, 3 steps ahead of somebody, and you are an expert, and like your knowledge is pure gold to that person. And so just talk to them, and it's much easier if you're like, no, I'm talking to naive, struggling younger me. Much easier.
Oh my goodness, I love that. That one really hit a nerve. I like that one a lot.
Good, I like
Well,
that.
Kasey, I want to be, respectful of time, and I want to thank you so much for this because I really think that kind of me jumping on that soapbox and saying, "Okay, come on, people, professional people, let's do this. Let's do this
Yeah.
together." You kind of really reinforced it, from a different perspective that I think is going to help tremendously a lot of people. So I can't thank you enough for this.
Well, thank you. It was a really fun conversation, and I really do hope it's helpful for listeners.
Oh, I think it's going to be great. So where can people find you? I mean, for the people that are interested in just following and
Yeah.
hearing all these nuggets, because there was a million of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, come reach out, come follow me, but also don't hesitate reaching out on LinkedIn. It's Kasey Jones, Kasey with a K. And uh sign up for my newsletter. I have two. The Power Your platform is like very specific about kind of personal branding. But yeah, come follow me, come reach out, let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything I can do to support you. I'm always happy to help.
Perfect. Kasey, thank you so much. I hope you got so much value out of that, just as much as I did. So I want to thank Kasey Jones for being an amazing guest. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will see you next time on The Bridge.